St. Francis is thought to have written these following words. I think God might be a little prejudiced. For once, they asked me to join them on a walk through this world, and we gazed into every heart on this earth, and I noticed God lingered a bit longer before any face that was weeping and before any eyes that were laughing. And sometimes when we passed a soul in worship, God too would kneel down. I have come to learn God adores creation. For many, St. Francis is remembered for such things as rejecting a life of privilege and embracing one of poverty, and creating a new approach to Christian monasticism. However, his greatest offering to Christian theology is often reduced to something of a caricature. Francis preached to the animals. Yes, Francis did preach to the animals, but in doing so, he was helping Christianity recover a neglected part of its tradition. While we should always be careful of making broad generalizations, I can say quite broadly that for most of its history, Christianity has taken only minimal interest in the natural world. At its worst, Christianity's view of nature has been destructive and bears part of the responsibility for the ecological crisis facing the world today. These problems, in part, stem from the opening chapter of the book of Genesis, where God tells humanity, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the air and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." In particular, that word subdue has had a particularly negative impact on the way Christianity has shaped its understanding of creation. Surely it's not that simple, you may wonder. After all, that same biblical passage concludes with the words, "God saw all that had been made, and indeed it was very good." The opening passage of Genesis does affirm the inherent goodness of the created world. While our Jewish forebears maintained a strong relationship with the earth, evidenced through expressions such as the land of promise, we might return to that thought at the end of the service, early Christians were influenced by Platonic philosophy that emphasized the spiritual as superior to the physical. It was this influence that shaped Christian thought away from the here and now and shifted the focus to the life yet to come, that is, life after death. The result of this was that the negative relationship between humanity and nature that Christian theology drew from that Genesis story to reinforce was also reinforced by this dualistic thinking that placed humanity as more important than nature and as heaven as being more important than earth. The understanding of earth as simply a place of trial and testing before our real life begins in heaven has ultimately had a devastating effect on how Christians have treated the physical world. We have treated the earth with about the same level of reverence that we reserve for a bus stop, a queue at the supermarket, or a waiting room at the dentist. Earth, however, is not a waiting room. It's not a place for waiting. It is a place for living. When Francis began to engage with creation and to affirm God's love for the physical world, he was swimming against the tide of Christian thought. He was not the only one to have done so, but his impact on the world is such that today he is remembered as the patron saint of ecology and as the patron saint of environmentalism. Many of Francis's followers down the centuries continued to engage positively with nature. Some, like Saint Bonaventure, came to uphold all of creation as utterly sacred and as a true reflection of the divine. What this really means is that while much of Christian interaction with the environment has been negative, there is within our tradition a minority viewpoint that affirms the sacredness of all that has been created. We can rightly claim that God is revealed through creation, both in the act of creation itself, but also through what has been created. While dualistic thought can lead to the false assumption that God is somehow removed from the world, Franciscan thought has recovered the view that God is very much present in all that we experience. So today is Trinity Sunday. There's my first mention of the Trinity, just so that we can tick that box. It is the day set aside each year to contemplate the mystery which is the inner life of God. At their worst, theological descriptions of the inner workings of God focus purely on spiritual matters with no reference to creation. God remains aloof, in heaven, separated from this world. How can such a view of God help us towards a more caring understanding of this world we inhabit? In reflecting upon the Trinity, C.S. Lewis made a helpful comment in reminding us that a doctrine, such as the doctrine of the Trinity, is not God. A doctrine is more like a map. In the case of the doctrine of the Trinity, it's a map that has been based on the experience of many Christians over a great period of time. What that means is that while this map is far from perfect, and it is far from perfect, it's the best map we have. So what might this map suggest to us? By the end of the 20th century, the one area of firm agreement among Trinitarian scholars is that God, within God's very being, is relational. The three aspects of the Trinity exist as a holy community, deeply engaged and interrelating with each other across time and even before time. God is a social God within God's very being. But this relationality is not simply contained within God. The Trinitarian relationship is not found within a God who stands separate and apart from creation, but rather as a dynamic, creative energy within all we experience. For us, the way to delve more deeply into God and our experience of the divine is to plunge more deeply into life itself. So how can this creation of which we are a part help us to know this Trinitarian God more fully? In the church setting, we sometimes make light of those who describe themselves as spiritual but not religious. There are a fair few members of this community who may well describe themselves in such a way. Some of us get frustrated with the ease with which some people cast off that challenge of working out their faith and their understanding within a community. And they cast it off often in favour of things like long walks on the beach. But in our critique of such trends away from organised religion, we run the risk of devaluing spiritual practices that are enriching and, dare I say it, essential to deepening our relationship with ourselves, each other, and whatever it is we believe God to be. Contemplation of beauty is a deeply nourishing form of prayer. Contemplation is distinctly different to our liturgical forms of prayer that sometimes suggest that our relationship with God is simply demand and supply. What I'm really getting at is that long walks on the beach are a necessary part of being Christian. Any type of religious practice that draws us beyond ourselves and causes us to respond in awe for all that exists is a sacred experience. It is all too easy as humans to stray into an egocentric view of reality that places us at the centre of all things. Okay, I'm actually going to own that one. It pains me to admit it, but I am not the centre of this universe. But, and the but is always important, I am a unique expression of God's creative work within this universe. I have a place, you have a place, we all have a place as part of creation. Bill Bryson, in his wonderful book, which is called A Short History of Nearly Everything, and it lives up to that title, points out that our bodies are formed from elements that were created in the depths of a star millions of years ago. In fact, every single thing that you are seeing right now was formed in this way. The atoms that form your body have travelled a very, very long way to be part of you. And when we are gone, those atoms which have so kindly made us the people we are will continue their journey through the universe. They will go on to form other living beings who will live uniquely different lives to ours. Because our atoms don't really belong to us. They are an expression of the creative energy of this universe. Isn't that overwhelming? Do you feel overwhelmed? Maybe just whelmed. You should feel overwhelmed. Such thoughts help us glimpse how massive God's creation is. Such thoughts help us appreciate just how vast and intricate it all is, God included. Albert Einstein once said, "The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and all science. Those to whom this emotion is a stranger, who can no longer pause to wonder and stand in rapt awe, is as good as dead. Their eyes are closed." The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. So let us open our eyes and seek God.